All over the internet, the new rules for D&D are being revealed. So let's gather everything into one video and discuss these new options for the future of D&D. WOTC has been slowly teasing the release of the new Player's Handbook for a couple of weeks now, and if you're like me, you probably are getting a little tired of the vague references to class abilities, subclasses, and everything else without seeing the actual text. Luckily, they've also been dishing out several big reveals to us creators with specific rules and features, and the largest of these reveals? 4 new subclasses straight from the PHB for Rogue, Barbarian, Bard, and Warlock. So without wasting any time, let's dive right into the Assassin Rogue along with some extra feats that I think will play pretty nicely with it. The new Assassin will get proficiency in the Disguise Kit and the Poisoner's Kit when you take the subclass at level 3. But you'll actually get both kits, unlike the old 2014 version that kind of just left you to figure that out for yourself. Also at level 3, we'll unlock the Assassinate ability with some noteworthy changes from what you might be used to. This new version seeks to remove the old reliance on the clunky surprise mechanics of 5e by giving you advantage on initiative rolls and advantage on attacks against creatures that haven't yet taken their turn in combat. Then, when you hit a creature with your sneak attack in the first round, which should happen damn near every time, they'll take extra damage equal to your rogue level. Sadly, this does mean that we won't get our beloved auto crits anymore. And although the damage will trigger more reliably, I do wish it was more damage. Later, at level 9, we'll get the usual ability to mimic a person's speech and handwriting perfectly after an hour of studying them, and we'll get an important improvement to the new Steady Aim ability. Some of you may recognize Steady Aim from the optional rules in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but now it's become a part of the base rogue class at level 3. Normally this feature grants us advantage on our next attack roll on the current turn as a bonus action so long as we haven't moved yet, setting our speed to 0 after we use the ability. This is a great way to trigger our sneak attacks more often, but it does come at a hefty price if you aren't playing an assassin. The improvement we get at level 9 will allow us to move even after using the Steady Aim ability, although it does look like we'll still need to use Steady Aim before we move in general, which could be a bit of a pain for builds that use melee weapons. This is at least giving us something a little more useful than the old 2014 version did, but I'd still love to see more based on what I've seen from other classes and subclasses thus far. At level 13, we'll unlock an all-new feature called Envenom Weapons that allows us to deal an extra 2d6 poison damage when we poison a creature with the base Rogue's Cunning Strike feature. Cunning Strike is yet another new ability for Rogue, and one that I'm actually pretty excited about. The feature is unlocked at your 5th level in Rogue and allows us to utilize our sneak attack damage as a resource by spending 1d6 of the damage to impose certain debilitating effects upon our enemies. These effects include the ability to poison an enemy for a minute against a Constitution saving throw, knock an enemy prone against a Dexterity saving throw, so long as they're large or smaller, and withdraw from danger by moving up to half your movement speed without provoking opportunity attacks. The saving throws for the first 2 options equal 8 plus your Dexterity modifier plus your proficiency bonus, and at level 5, we can use only 1 Cunning Strike option at a time when we land our sneak attack. However, by the time the assassin gets Envenom Weapons, we'll actually be able to use more than 1 option at a time, and using this new feature, we'll actually gain damage dice by taking the poison option and potentially inflict the poisoned condition. This ability even gets around poison resistance, so it would seem that WOTC is aware that this damage type isn't exactly stellar. Lots of monsters traditionally resist poison damage, but quite a few are also immune to poison damage and the poisoned condition. So I'm not completely sold on it, but it does at least provide the most effortless and streamlined poisoned weapon flavor that I've seen thus far. Then at level 17, the assassin gets their old Death Strike ability from 2014. But as you might guess, this version looks a little different. Once again, seeking to get away from the surprise mechanics of 5e, this ability states that when you hit with a sneak attack in the first round of combat, the target makes a con save and takes double damage if they fail. It's important to note that this stacks with crits just like the old version of this ability, and it works way more reliably than the old version did. It could even get triggered more than once in a round if you're smart about it. Suddenly, that extra damage from your Assassinate ability at 3rd level is dealing a static 17 extra damage here that would also get doubled for a total of 34 before you roll any damage dice. Overall, I think the subclass does a pretty decent job of playing into that assassin fantasy, and it does give you a good reason to stick with Rogue all the way through your level progression. I just wish we weren't targeting Constitution saves so much here, since that tended to be a rough one in the past. But who knows, maybe that won't be the case anymore. Now, before we move on, let's take a moment to look at a couple of feats that were unveiled and I think will work pretty well with your future assassin builds. First, a fan favorite in the Lucky feat returns, allowing yourself to get advantage on a roll immediately after rolling a d20, or impose disadvantage on a creature's attack when they roll a d20 to attack you. This new version can be a pretty great option for the rogue to trigger advantage for sneak attack in a pinch, although the old version could actually stack with advantage. Additionally, we'll start with less uses of the feature since it will be equal to our proficiency bonus per long rest, but that will quickly grow to be even better than the old version's static 3 uses. And if that isn't quite your speed, you may also want to look into the new Alert feat. This will add your proficiency bonus to your initiative rolls, but it'll also allow you to swap your initiative with a willing ally immediately after you roll initiative, unless that ally is incapacitated. In a subclass that wants to make the first move in every battle, Alert is sure to be a go-to for assassins. But they aren't the only ones with fancy new tricks. Next, let's check out the much improved Great Old One Warlock subclass, a somewhat underpowered favorite from the 2014 rules. Now taking your Warlock subclass at level 3 instead of at level 1, your Warlock will awaken their mind. As a bonus action, you can choose one creature within 30 feet that you can see and speak telepathically with each other so long as you're within a number of miles equal to your charisma modifier and you share a language. This connection lasts a number of minutes equal to your Warlock level, and it ends early if you use this feature to connect with another creature, but there's no limit on how many times per day you can do this. And you can even do this to enemies without them making a saving throw. This is important to note for later. Additionally, your Warlock will get some default always prepared spells. This list is better than the old one we got, and we have 4 entries at level 3 instead of just the usual 2. Hopefully this is a commonality among all Warlock subclasses, but we'll have to wait and see. You'll also be able to change the damage of your Warlock spells into psychic damage, an excellent damage type that's rarely resisted, and you won't have to use verbal or somatic components on your Warlock illusion and enchantment spells. Both of these extra features are pretty great, especially when you consider that you usually want to hide the fact that you're casting an illusion or enchantment spell anyway. And all this is just at 3rd level. Shortly after, at level 6, will become a clairvoyant combatant, and your awakened mind can force the creature to make a wisdom save against your spell save DC or get disadvantage on attack rolls against you while you have advantage against that creature for the duration of the bond. While you can only use this feature once per short rest unless you burn a spell slot to refresh it, the effect is pretty decent so long as your enemy fails the save, and we'll be able to hedge our bets on this in just a bit. 10th level first grants us Eldritch Hex, which makes it so that we always have the Hex spell prepared. And when we cast the Hex spell and choose an ability, the target also has disadvantage on saving throws of the chosen ability. Hex is known to be pretty useful for Warlocks early on, but it does fall off later. This appears to be stretching the viability of the spell, and it does make it easier for us to penetrate the minds of our enemies if we choose Wisdom as the targeted saving throw. I like the internal synergy here, even if we are relying a bit heavily on the Hex spell. We'll also become immune to having our thoughts read unless we allow it, and gain resistance to psychic damage at this level. Even further, we can reflect the psychic damage that we do take back onto the creature that hit us. Oh, and Wizards of the Coast did also reveal a new spell for Warlocks and Wizards that you might want to consider around this point. Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron is a 6th level conjuration spell for Warlocks and Wizards that summons a cauldron full of any potion of your choice that is common or uncommon as an action. Then, as a bonus action, you or an ally can take a vial from the cauldron up to your spellcasting modifier number of times before the spell ends after 10 minutes. All potions disappear the next time you cast this spell, but I can see this getting used like Goodberry right before you long rest if you have a spare spell slot to make sure that you and your allies almost always have 5 potions of greater healing on hand. Being that potions are officially a bonus action in this new edition, I'd say this is better than you might think. Then at level 14, we'll be able to create a thrall to do our bidding by casting the Summon Aberration spell without concentrating on it. The spell then only lasts for a minute instead of an hour, but it gets a lot more powerful. The Aberration will have temporary hit points equal to your Warlock level plus your Charisma modifier, and the first time the Aberration hits a creature under the effect of your Hex, it'll deal extra psychic damage to the target equal to the bonus damage of the Hex. This is a pretty great boost to a spell that should last all the way through most combats. This version of the Gulag is definitely my preferred one, and the increase in power for Warlocks overall is sure to make this a staple at many tables come September. But we also have a brand new subclass for the Bard to check out, and it's one that was getting a lot of attention during the playtests. Maybe in the spirit of that, I can persuade you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm doing my best this summer to keep up with the new rules and even uncover some secrets before they're officially announced. That said, your support really means a lot. Thanks. So, starting at level 3, the College of Dance grants your bard a number of monk-like abilities beginning with Unarmored Defense, which gives your bard AC equal to 10 plus your dexterity and your charisma modifier, so long as you aren't wearing armor or a shield. This isn't the best AC I've ever seen on a bard, but it should be better than most. Your bard will also have advantage on any performance check that involves you dancing, and you'll get a free unarmed strike anytime you expend a bardic inspiration. That unarmed strike can use your dexterity instead of your strength, and its damage will be equal to a roll of your bardic inspiration die, which is a d6 at level 1, a d8 at level 5, a d10 at level 10, and a d12 at level 15. While I do think I might have preferred to see us able to use our charisma for these unarmed strikes instead of dexterity, I'm not all that upset by it, and we'll get our real prize at level 6. Here we unlock Inspiring Movement, which allows us to, as a reaction to an enemy entering our melee range, spend a bardic inspiration die for us and one ally to move up to half our movement speed without provoking opportunity attacks. But we'll also get tandem footwork at this point. This will allow us to roll a bardic inspiration die to boost our initiative and the initiative of charisma modifier number of creatures within 60 feet of us. That's probably your whole party with a massive boost to initiative. This second feature is what I'm really excited about here, and it ironically couples really well with the Assassin Rogue we covered just a little while ago. We should also note here that our free unarmed strikes activate when we use either of these features, so long as there's an enemy within range. Finally, at 14th level, we'll get a special version of the old Rogue's evasion feature. Leading evasion states that when making a dex save against an effect that deals half damage, if you succeed, you instead take no damage on a success and you take half damage on a failure. Further, you can extend this effect to creatures within 5 feet of you that are making the same dex save. Did someone say fireball? Even though this ability is pretty good, it feels a little lackluster for 14th level when classes in the 2014 Player's Handbook got this ability at 7th level, and it still doesn't do as much as I'd like for the Bard's survivability. While our Inspiring Movement can help us out a bit here, I don't really want to be in melee with my enemy most of the time I'm playing a Bard, so I'm not sure I'm as stoked about this one as much as everyone else was during the playtest. There is, however, a bit that could be said when it comes to this subclass in the newly improved Cure Wounds spell that heals for 2d8 plus your spellcasting modifier instead of just 1d8. So this could play out a little better than I'm expecting, since it does seem that healing spells are getting some improvements in the core rules. And that brings us to another brand new subclass for the Barbarian, the Path of the World Tree. When you take this subclass at level 3, you'll gain the ability Vitality of the Tree, which grants you your Barbarian level in temporary HP whenever you rage. Additionally, whenever you start your turn and your rage is active, you can give another creature within 10 feet of you a bunch of temp HP as well. The amount for this second half of this ability is equal to your rage damage modifier plus a number of d6s equal to that modifier. At this point, that's going to be a free 2d6 plus 2 temp HP to one of your allies every turn, and that isn't bad at all. Even if you can't target yourself with this, and all of the temp HP goes away when your rage ends. Already we can see the Barbarian getting access to features that make them more of a team player that can help to bolster the rest of the party instead of just a mad brute. And I love this change in direction. That continues at 6th level, where Branches of the Tree allows us to teleport a creature within 30 feet to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of us against a strength saving throw as a reaction. The DC for this is 8 plus your strength modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Once the target fails the save and is teleported, you can then choose whether or not to set their speed to 0, implying that this is something you may want to utilize for allies and enemies alike. In reference to the latter, this ability is fantastic for reaching evasive enemies, especially the flying ones that you might have a hard time getting to. And if they aren't flying, I don't see why you couldn't position yourself near a ledge and then drop them off. It is an unoccupied space, right? Then at level 10, our Barbarian will get the Battering Roots feature, which increases your reach by 10 feet with any melee weapon that has the versatile or heavy property, so long as it is your turn. When you hit with such a weapon on your turn, you can then activate the Push or Topple Weapon Mastery property in addition to a different mastery property that you're using with that weapon. And I just made a video going over these properties if you want to check that out, but I can at least say that stacking them like this is going to be very, very good, especially with some of the rules in that video that WOTC hasn't revealed yet. Do at least note that the designers were very careful about wording this ability so it's only active on your turn, so no weird Sentinel or Polearm Master stuff. Though that doesn't really make it any less good. With this in combination with your other abilities, you could knock over your enemies and then drag them back to you while setting their speed to 0 so they can't even stand back up. Talk about intimidating. But level 14 brings us something even better in the Travel Along the Tree feature. This states that when you activate your rage, and as a bonus action while your rage is active, you can teleport up to 60 feet to an unoccupied space that you can see. Yep, there's no limit to this, just a free 60-foot bonus action teleport for a Barbarian. And that's still not the end. Once per rage, you can increase the range of the teleport to 150 feet and bring along 6 willing creatures who are within 10 feet of you. I'd have been happy with just free teleports every round, but this 150 feet version is a game changer. This can be an incredible get out of jail free card, or you can always leave the sharpshooter behind while you and the rest of the party explode onto the battlefield 150 feet ahead to catch an enemy off guard. I just love this. It's easily my favorite of any Barbarian subclass I've ever laid eyes on. And it's going to be even better when you realize just how much weapon mastery and a secret new rule for combat will play into how much this Barbarian is capable of. Check out this video next to see exactly what I'm talking about, and until next time, go out there and make some chaos.